A Spoonful of Spice, an autumn romance by Liwen Ho, narrated by jazzdoesvocals. Did you see her yet? Joshua Pepper picked up his cup from the cafe counter and turned around. Even with no caffeine in his system, his colleague appeared alert. His hazel eyes opened wide behind his silver frames. Danny's eager expression made him look like a college kid at his first frat party. Whoever he was referring to sounded a lot more exciting than the computer virus they had dealt with all night. Are you talking about the receptionist? Don't tell me her system got infected too. Danny took his drink from the barista and followed Josh out of the shop. No, not her. Don't worry. I told her not to open any emails from stranded relatives or friends asking for money. I'm talking about the new girl in IT. Josh raised a brow. Hearing the words girl and IT occur in the same sentence was about as likely as him ordering anything but a black coffee. It rarely happened. In his decade of working in the information technology industry, he'd only come across a dozen or so female IT employees. The field was known in the Silicon Valley as a boys' club, and his current company was no different. Or it was until last week when their boss, Mitch, announced he'd hired a woman. No, I haven't met her, and I'm not in a hurry to. In between sips of his coffee, he glanced at his cell phone as they walked along the busy San Francisco street. The weather had cooled down, making it easier to check email without sunlight bouncing off the screen. He was so familiar with the short route from his favourite cafe to the office that he could walk back with his eyes closed, which almost sounded like a good idea. What he wouldn't do for a nap right now. There'd been a slew of problems at work, and not enough hands to fix them. So he'd been living in his cubicle. He hadn't showered or changed clothes in 2 days. But neither had half the team, so there were no complaints. But with a woman around, he had a feeling things were about to change. All I care about is that she can do more to a computer than reboot it. The last thing I need on my plate is to handhold the new kid. Danny smirked as he opened the front door to the high-rise of their company's headquarters. I sure hope that caffeine kicks in soon, 'cause you're not going to like what I have to tell you. He punched the call button for the elevator. I overheard Mitch say you'll be the one training her. You're joking, right? Any of the guys can do it. It's not rocket science. Although with the amount of hours he'd been putting in, he could have built a spaceship by now. The IT field wasn't as prestigious as the sciences, but he enjoyed the work and was good at it. That's why he'd been promoted to team lead a year ago. The elevator doors opened and they stepped inside and hit the button for the 10th floor. Josh leaned against a mirrored wall. He ran a hand through his uncombed hair. Then he turned to Danny. Why don't you volunteer? It sounds like you wouldn't mind holding her hand. I did, along with everyone else. But Mitch already made up his mind. You're the lucky guy. Lucky? Right. He took a final sip of his coffee, swallowing the bitter flavour. Great, I wonder what I did to deserve this honour. Josh found the answer 10 minutes later when Mitch cornered him at his desk. You're the best guy I've got. The middle-aged man wore a sheepish grin that reminded Josh of a used car salesman. Just walk her through the ticketing system so she understands step by step how to troubleshoot an issue. Take her around to the other departments and introduce her to some of the regular customers. You know the drill? Yeah, he did, which was why he knew it would be a waste of his time. I understand, Mitch, and I wouldn't mind if I wasn't in the middle of dealing with this virus. Can't you have someone else do it? I appreciate how you worked around the clock on that issue, Josh. You got the bug contained. Now let Danny deal with the cleanup. But Mitch held up his hand and took a couple of steps forward until he was standing next to Josh's chair. Look, I'll be straight with you. HR told me we needed more diversity in our department. We just hired a couple of female employees for the network and server teams, and I made it a point to also hire one for the help desk. I didn't find just any woman off the street, mind you. I made sure she was experienced and qualified for the job. When she came into the interview, I had a good feeling about her. All her references checked out too. I'm sure she could do the work. But I need someone to show her the ropes. Someone I can count on to be professional. Professional? What was Mitch getting at? All the guys are professional, but they're young. You're the lead and someone I can trust to get the job done. The other guys are acting like goofy college kids trying to get a girl's attention at a party. Josh burst out laughing, but sobered up when he noticed Mitch's scowl. Sorry, you're saying that other guys can't train her because they want to impress her? It's not like there aren't any other women in the company. But she's one of us. Someone they're going to be around every day. Plus she's young, friendly and easy to talk to, so the guys don't know when to stop. I need to make sure everyone stays on task. Can you do that, Josh? His boss's tone told him there was no use in arguing. He'd have to accept that he was a glorified babysitter, which was something he was used to as the oldest member of the team. At 29, he was a good 4 to 5 years older than the others. Yeah, sure, I can do that. But how do you know I won't want to impress her too? He joked. Mitch clapped him on the shoulder and snickered. You're what they call a catch. You don't have problems getting a woman's attention, unlike some of the other guys around here. Josh grinned. He knew he was a decent-looking guy, or so his younger sister said. They joked that his appearance somewhat made up for his overinflated ego, the one that prevented him from admitting when he was wrong. Which, to be honest, wasn't often. I'll take that as a compliment. But you don't have to worry. I'm not interested in dating right now anyway. Good, then you'll be able to handle a little distraction, Mitch added as he stood up to leave. Without a doubt, with his crazy work hours, the last thing he had time for was a relationship. His career path didn't allow for one either. At the rate the company was expanding, the department would need another manager soon, and he intended on making that position his. The faster he trained this new employee, the better. By the way, what's her name? Mitch did a 180 at the cubicle's entrance. It's Cin. Cin? Josh rubbed the day-old stubble on his chin. As in Cindy? You know, I didn't ask. Let's just hope it's not short for Cinderella, 'cause that would make you the fairy godmother. Josh rolled his eyes. He could hear an occasional snort from his boss as he walked away. Great, at least someone was getting a laugh at his expense. An hour later, Josh made his way down the hall toward the far end of the IT department. He approached 2 tables set up at a 90-degree angle with a sign that read, IT Help Desk. They usually served a couple of people at any given time, but from the small crowd gathered in the area today, there appeared to be some major problems going on. His shoulders tightened at the thought of another issue to deal with. What's going on? He called out to the guys clad in jeans and t-shirts who were huddled around the tables. Is the virus back? Why didn't anyone get me? His co-workers turned around, confusion written on their faces. Danny shook his head and piped up, No man, nothing's down. Then what are you all standing around for? Another colleague replied, We're showing Cin how to use the ticketing system. Seriously, why would it take half a dozen guys to do one simple task? I've got this. Everyone get back to work. Those tickets aren't going to resolve themselves. The group released a collective sigh and said their goodbyes to the person sitting in the middle of the circle. Josh stood with his arms crossed in his favourite drill sergeant stance and gave each guy a stern glare as he passed. Mitch was right. The team was already off their game, but he'd keep them in line. Hi, you must be Josh? The one remaining person at the table came into view. Her high-pitched voice caught him by surprise, but not as much as the pair of green eyes peering at him over the top of an open laptop. Those eyes were the lightest shade of green he had ever seen, reminding him of 2 pools of clear water. They studied him with intensity. Yeah, I'm Josh. It's so nice to meet you. It took him a moment to realise she was waiting for him to shake her hand. He reached out, surprised by her firm grip, despite the softness of her skin. You must be Cin? She released his hand and smiled, revealing a dimple in her right cheek. "The one and only. Mitch said you'd be training me. I've got the ticketing system down. The guys did a thorough job of explaining it to me." Josh took a seat across from her. "I bet they did. If only they were as eager to do their other tasks as they were to help you." "No offense, we don't have time here to sit around." "Don't worry, I'm pretty sure it's a phase. I'm like the pink elephant at the zoo. They're just curious about the new kid in town, so they stopped by to say hi." Mitch's comments crossed his mind. "Right, it's because you're new." Cin leaned in close, her eyes sparkling with humour. "I'm not blind, Josh. It's because I'm a girl. Or haven't you noticed?" Oh, he noticed all right. With her long wavy hair and lips shiny with gloss, she looked like a girl. He caught a whiff of perfume coming from her direction. She even smelled like a girl. There was no way around this fact. He cleared his throat and met her eyes. "You've got a point. You're the first female IT persons we've had on the help desk team. So it's understandable that people would be curious. Not that gender is an issue. We're all about equal opportunities." "I'm so thankful for that. Several of the other places I applied at didn't even ask me in for an interview. They ended the call pretty quickly once they heard my voice over the phone. It's rough breaking into the IT world as a woman. Men don't think we're technical enough." Josh gave an uneasy smile. He'd been guilty of that misconception as well. He clasped his hands behind his head and leaned back, attempting to sound casual. "Well, not all guys think that way. Mitch certainly doesn't. Me neither. If either one of my sisters wanted to go into IT, I wouldn't discourage her." "I like how open-minded you are, Josh. Just so you know, I graduated at the top of my class in computer science. I've been taking systems apart and putting them back together since I was a kid. My dad's an engineer, and so are both of my older brothers. Technology's in my blood." He grinned. She did have her enthusiasm going for her. Maybe her bubbly attitude would bring some positive energy to the team, if she didn't cause too much of a distraction. "Great, you'll fit right in." "That's the plan. Give me a week, 2 tops, and I'll be like one of the guys." "All right, let's get started with the training. The sooner you get familiar with everything, the sooner you can help customers." And the quicker he could focus on his own work. "So, why IT?" Josh closed an email he'd been reading on his phone and turned to his left. Cin was seated next to him at the help desk, her straight posture a sign that she meant business. Normally he didn't let newbies interact with customers their first week on the job, but she'd insisted she was ready. So he insisted on observing, for protocol's sake of course. So far it'd been a quiet morning, with more downtime than issues to deal with. But here she was asking him another question, her third one in 10 minutes. "Why IT? What do you mean?" She tapped one finger against her lips, which were a dark pink shade today. "What made you choose the IT field? It's not exactly the most glamorous career, but I can tell you're serious about your job. You've been staring at your phone non-stop, which makes me think you're either checking email or taking selfies. I hope it's not the latter, 'cause you really need to work on your duck face." She turned her mouth into a dramatic pout and sucked in her cheeks. "So, what's your motivation?" "My motivation?" He should have been annoyed by the drawn-out conversation, but there was something about her voice that caught his attention. The tone was light and warm, even sweet. "Besides making money?" She gave him an incredulous look. "Now we both know that's not the reason, although the stock options don't hurt. They're more of a necessity than a perk. What with the housing prices we pay here in the city?" "You've got that right. It's not the money." "So what is it then?" He ran one hand along the armrest of his chair. It's been a while since he'd had to explain to anyone why he did what he did. All the recruiters and hiring managers valued were his technical skills, but the motivation behind them? No one cared to ask. "I guess I like the mental part of a job, analysing a problem, figuring out the root cause, and coming up with a solution. I've always liked solving puzzles, even as a kid." You're talking about brain teasers, right? I love those. Yeah, well, it started when I got the chickenpox in 3rd grade and had to stay home for a week. My mum got me a Rubik's Cube to keep my hands busy so I wouldn't scratch my blisters open. Did it work? It did. I spent hours on that cube when I wasn't playing Super Mario Brothers. By the time I went back to school, I could solve it in 4 minutes flat. Nice. She cocked her head and narrowed her eyes. Hey, I've been meaning to ask. Do you guys do game nights here? I saw some systems hooked up to the TV in the conference room. Yeah, every Friday. Why, do you play? Do I play? I'm the queen of Mario Kart. I had the fastest time at my old company. This was unexpected. Neither one of his sisters liked video games, so he assumed Cin wouldn't either. But it sounded like she was good at it. Maybe even good enough to give him some healthy competition. We should play sometime. Sure, how about tonight? He liked her confidence. Tonight works. You're on. He returned the bright grin she flashed his way. Spending time with Cin was turning out to be more fun than he expected. He realised he wouldn't mind learning more about her too. What about you? Why did you choose IT? Her shoulders lifted and fell in a casual shrug. It was a no-brainer. I like computers and I like helping people. This is the perfect way to blend those two parts of my life together. Helping people? She rolled her eyes at him, as if he didn't appreciate the punchline to a good joke. Yeah, like what we're doing here, you know, helping people at the help desk, helping to fix their systems so they can get back to being productive and doing what they're good at. Huh, I guess so. Though he had to admit, he didn't view his job that way. He was all about solving problems quickly and efficiently and getting the owners of those problems off his back. If only people didn't always have to come to us with complaints. No one appreciates us when things are up and running, but once something crashes, they blame IT. Well, without those complaints, we'd be out of a job. He scoffed. I guess that's one way of looking at it. Maybe if you changed your perspective, you'd enjoy your work more. Who said he didn't enjoy his work? Before he could refute her comment, a man wearing a dress shirt and slacks approached them. Hey Ed, how's it going? Josh greeted the VP of Sales as he plopped down in a chair across from them. How can we help you? This piece of junk won't boot. Ed set his laptop on the table and opened the case. I was in the middle of writing a presentation and it went black. Tell me I didn't lose my work. No worries, sir. Cin spoke up in a calm voice. I'll take a look at it and see if we can recover the data for you. Oh, you're going to do it? Ed stammered with a questioning glance at Josh. Ed, this is Cin Thomas, our newest IT recruit. Rest assured your system's in good hands. Josh shot the older man a tight smile, all the while hoping he wouldn't be swallowing his words later. Cin laced her slender fingers together and nodded. I can see you have a lot on your plate, Ed, so I'll work fast. It shouldn't take me more than an hour and a half, 2 hours tops. Why don't you take advantage of this time to get some fresh air? The grind down the street just put their seasonal drinks on the menu. That's not a bad idea. Ed's expression softened as he stood up. I'll be back in a while, thanks. Josh stared at Ed's back as he sauntered off, surprised to hear him whistling as he turned the corner. That was some customer service. Ed's not easy to please. Cin finished rolling up the sleeves of her denim button-down shirt before she turned to him, her green eyes sparkling. She promised, wait till I fix his laptop. He'll be dancing back to his office later. Her confidence worried and amused him at the same time. Let's hope so. I'd hate to see what happens if he doesn't get his data back. Oh, ye of little faith. Josh leaned forward in his seat, ready to observe Cin at work. He wavered between wanting her to prove him right about her lack of technical expertise and risk upsetting their new customer, or wow them both. Did he want her to fail, though? He could try to help her along without being too obvious. She closed the laptop and turned it over so the base faced up. Glancing around, she asked, Where do we keep the screwdrivers? He grabbed a small set of tools from the table next to theirs and opened it for her. You'll need a Phillips head. I think this one. Thanks, I got it. Though it wasn't overt, he sensed some slight annoyance in her voice, which reminded him of his sister's reactions when they thought he was overbearing. He set the tools on the table and decided to back off. I have emails I need to reply to. Let me know if you need anything. Will do. Josh picked up his phone, all the while watching Cin out of the corner of his eyes. All of her movements were smooth, swift, and calculated. She wasn't doing bad, actually, and well enough that he ended up spending more time checking his phone than her progress. A little under 2 hours later, he rubbed the back of his neck and lifted his head. Cin was putting the final screw back into the laptop case. She then placed a call to Ed, who appeared at the help desk shortly after. Here you are. Cin faced the laptop screen toward Ed. Everything's restored and working again. Great, thank you. If I ever need help again, you'll be the first one I ask. Ed gave them both a thumbs up as he picked up his system and walked away. You did good. Real good, Josh admitted, trying to not sound too surprised. Not bad for a girl, huh? He attempted to pick his jaw up off the floor before she could notice, but her laughing eyes confirmed he wasn't fast enough. No, it was really good for an IT person. But I wouldn't call those moves. He jerked his head in Ed's direction. Dancing? You sure about that? Her challenging tone made him glance down the hall again, just in time to see Ed bop his head up and down, the sound of whistling accompanying his brisk steps. Josh chuckled. He had a feeling this wouldn't be the last time Cin would surprise him. Hey Pepper, you want to grab some coffee? Josh turned around. Cin stood in the doorway of his cubicle with a bright smile and one thumb jerked in the direction behind her. Hey Thomas, sure I could use something strong. Fingers crossed that nothing goes down while we're out. Oh goodness, you're such a fuddy-duddy. You're calling me names now. I'm only a couple of years older than you. Yes, but you sound like an old man with how much you worry. The phones have been up for 2 hours now. As long as the power doesn't go out, she crossed her fingers and winked, we should be okay. He chuckled. In the past 6 months, Cin had managed to make friends with everyone on the team, including him. He always counted on her teasing to lighten the mood, especially after a hairy morning like the one they had today. All right, but let's make this quick. Let's go. He grabbed his jacket from the seat back and followed her out of the office, picking up his feet to keep up with her. Cin walked as fast as she worked. She'd proven she could crush tickets as well as the guys and handle customer complaints with ease. In fact, she was now the most sought-out person in the IT department. Are you sure you haven't had caffeine already? Nope, I'm just a morning person. But you're also unusually alert on the nights we play Mario Kart. That makes you a night owl too. That's not fair to the rest of us mere mortals, he quipped as he followed her into the empty elevator. It's called being positive. Besides, I have too much fun beating you to be tired. Ha, he scoffed, trying hard to swallow his pride. She'd proven herself to be a worthy opponent during their weekly game nights, and he was still getting used to coming in second sometimes. Thanks for the reminder. You're very welcome. Maybe you should try it sometime. Try what? Looking on the bright side, thinking happy thoughts. Josh stuffed his hands into his pockets and leaned against the wall. Well, if you want to get into clichés, it's hard to be positive when customers are literally breathing down your neck. Why does everyone expect things to be done yesterday? Okay, note to self. Do not talk to Mr. Grumps before he has caffeine. He couldn't help but smile at her wide-eyed expression. Those green eyes of hers were something else. Somehow they made her look innocent and stunning at the same time. They were perfect reflections of her personality. Too bad you can't bottle up some of your positivity and sell it. I'm sure you'd have people lining up for it. myself included. I think that's why you're so popular around here. Popular? What do you mean by that? People line up at the help desk whenever you're there. Or haven't you noticed? She gave him a side glance before replying, I've noticed. The team's attitude has changed too. The guys were on their best behaviour, keeping their crude jokes to a minimum, making extra efforts with their hygiene. Even he was having a more positive perspective about his job. Having Cin on the team was turning out to be a win-win for everyone. You think so? Yeah, they seem to be taking their work more seriously. He thought he picked up on some doubt in her voice. With her head down though, he couldn't see her expression to be sure. They reached the ground floor and exited the elevator. Cin looped her scarf around her neck and buttoned her jean jacket. Josh zipped his own jacket and turned up the collar. Here, let me get that, he insisted as he opened the building's main door. Thanks, Cin replied curtly before taking off down the sidewalk. Josh held the door open for several people coming in, then caught up to her at the end of the block. Hey, wait up. This old geezer's having a hard time keeping up with you. Sorry. Cin crossed her arms and tapped the toe of her boot as they waited for the traffic light to change. I appreciate you opening the door for me, but you don't need to give me any special treatment. I'm one of the guys, remember? He glanced over, surprised to see her eyebrows drawn together. Her tone had sounded light, but her eyes was anything but. I'm all for equal rights, but my parents raised me to be a gentleman. That includes opening doors for women and paying the tab. On a date, yes, but not at work. I don't consider this, he pointed at the skyscrapers around them, the workplace. He raised an eyebrow as her cheeks flushed. Something was off. She was never this serious. What's going on? That wasn't the first time I opened a door for you. If it bothers you so much, I won't do it. But you never brought it up before. The light changed and they crossed the street. Cin slowed her steps and turned to him with a tight smile. You're right, this isn't about you. Forget I said anything. If it's not about me, what is it about? She sighed. I'm frustrated. I get the sense that a couple of the guys on the team still can't get past the fact that I'm a woman. What do you mean? Did something happen? Her hands formed tight fists at her side. It's nothing bad. They're just really eager to help me. But sometimes it feels like they're competing for my attention. All this special treatment is a bit much. I wish they'd tone it down and see me as one of them. Josh winced. This was exactly what Mitch had warned him about, and something he should have kept closer tabs on. Perhaps it was time he gave the guys a formal talk. I'm glad you told me about this. Let me talk to Mitch and see if we can address it in our next department meeting. Oh, but that would bring even more attention to the issue and make things awkward. Don't worry, we wouldn't tackle it head on, of course, but more as a reminder for everyone to focus on their tickets and make sure they're meeting their quotas. In that case, sure, I'd appreciate it, thanks. No problem. He grinned as another idea came to mind. I could also walk around the cubicles every half an hour to check on the guys and redirect any unwanted attention. Cin's eyes grew wide. With your drill sergeant voice, you would enjoy that way too much. You're right, I would, he smirked. You know me well. They arrived at the grind and Josh placed his hand on the door handle, but quickly withdrew it. Sorry, he blurted out. As he gestured for Cin to go ahead, it's a habit. Her face broke into a smile. It's okay, Josh, I know you're not that shallow. You've treated me like one of the guys from the very beginning. Josh opened the door, allowing her to enter first. Warm air enveloped them as they lined up in the shop, decorated in earthy hues. To be honest, I wasn't sure what to expect when you first started, but you've more than proven yourself. You're a lot more technical than the rest of the team. He valued the way she thought through problems, kept track of details and worked at an issue until it was resolved. She beamed upon hearing this praise. Thanks. I liked how surprised you were when I figured it out. What? Me? Surprised? Yes. You didn't think I could do it. Those piercing green eyes weren't going to let him off the hook. Okay, I was humbled that you discovered the solution before I did. But it's cool. I can't know everything. You're not afraid to admit when you're wrong. I like that about you. Well, I hope I'm a likeable guy. That you are, but seriously, I could learn from you. I know I get kind of competitive at times. Kind of, he interjected with a grin. I thought I took losing hard. You're not even satisfied when we tie for first. All right, so I'm very competitive, but I'm trying to change. I realised I don't have as much fun when all I care about is winning. It's a lot more freeing to do something just for the joy of it. You've got a point there. You're pretty wise for your young age. Ha! She scoffed. Well, I kind of have to thank you for this newfound wisdom. Losing to you at video games has been helping to keep my attitude in check. The dismay in her voice was so endearing. He had difficulty keeping a straight face. You don't say. Go ahead and smile, I know you want to. He complied and elbowed her playfully. It must be your positive energy rubbing off on me. Laughing, she turned toward the front of the cafe to study the menu. Something she'd said replayed in his mind. He tapped her on the shoulder and asked, Hey, what did you mean by I'm not that shallow? Are you saying I am to some degree? Cin turned and tilted her head to study him. I'm trying to figure out if that's a real question or not. I have 2 brothers, Pepper. I know a thing or two about the male species. You do you? He humoured her. So what do you know? Guys are visual creatures. It's the way they're wired. As my brother, Dill, says, men were made to appreciate beautiful things. Fast cars, cool electronics, and hot girls. It was cute how she rolled her eyes. And girls don't? Don't tell me you don't notice a guy's appearance. I have 2 sisters, in case you forgot. I know how women think. She took a few steps as the line inched forward. I didn't say we don't, but we take a lot of other factors into consideration. The guy may be okay looks-wise, but if he's a gentleman like you, that makes up for it. If he's a gentleman like me. Exactly. He rubbed the scruff along his jawline. I don't know how you do it, but you manage to compliment and diss me at the same time. I guess it's a good thing I don't rely on my looks for a living. Cin's eyes grew wide as she realised what he was hinting at. I didn't mean it in that way. I think you're sweet, considerate, and handsome. Can I get that in writing? He found himself enjoying the effect his words had on her. Gone were the worry lines across her forehead. Her cheeks were now pink. Josh Pepper, that's the last time I say something nice about you. Next in line, the barista called out. Oblivious to how far the line had moved, Josh saw that it was their turn to order. He stepped up with Cin close behind. What would you like, Thomas? My treat today. I should order drinks for the whole team then, she smirked. I'll take a large pumpkin spice latte, please, she told the man behind the counter. I'll have your coffee of the day, Josh added as he thumbed through his wallet. The name's Josh. Got it. No need to pay. The couple over there in the corner's paying for everyone today. They just got engaged. Josh followed the barista's finger and spotted a young Asian couple holding hands across their table. That's awesome. Let's go thank them. Cin tugged on his arm and pulled him over to the corner. The couple glanced up as they approached. Hey, I'm Cin, and this is Josh. We wanted to congratulate you on your engagement. And thanks for picking up our tab. Josh shook hands with the tall, lanky man. That was kind of you. No problem. We were excited to share our good news with everyone at our favourite cafe. I'm Barry, and this is my fiancée, Alyssa. Hi, the petite woman greeted them. It's so nice to meet another happy couple. Josh and Cin traded wide-eyed looks. Oh, Cin gestured to themselves. We're just friends. Josh nodded. Yeah, co-workers. Alyssa gave them a knowing smile. That's great. That's how we started off too. As friends. It was a sweet surprise for us. Barry winked at Alyssa. When we realised we were better off as something more. You never know what might happen. Josh ran one hand through his hair, contemplating a way to exit the conversation. It was getting a bit much. The couple's affection and their outrageous suggestion. He forced a smile as he heard the barista call out his name. Hey, our drinks are ready. It was nice meeting you guys. Yeah, thanks again for paying, Cin added. Good luck with your wedding. Okay, that was awkward, Josh mumbled as they walked to the pickup counter. They were about ready to send wedding invitations for us. She shrugged as she took her cup. I think they're cute. They just wanted everyone to share in their happiness. He picked up his cup. You don't think they had our drinks spiked with happy juice, do you? No, it's more likely a love potion. Cin's dimple peeked out as she laughed. Come on, where's your sense of romance? Or at least your sense of humour? Maybe I'll find it in here. He lifted the cup to his lips and took a drink. The black coffee woke up his taste buds along with the rest of his body. Yep, they gave me a shot of funny today. I feel the jokes coming on right about now. Ha ha, I suppose 1 out of 2 isn't bad. Let's see what they gave me. She tasted her drink, then wrinkled her nose. What, something wrong with your drink? Nothing's wrong, but it needs more. More? He followed her to the condiment centre. More cream or sugar? Nope, more cinnamon. She located a metal shaker with a mesh lid and turned it over. Fine reddish-brown powder fell out, dusting the swirl of whipped cream on top of her drink. She placed the lid on the cup and took a sip. Perfect. My mum's a chef, and she always says, when life tastes bland, add a spoonful of spice. Spice, huh? I'd have to agree with her. He pushed the cafe door open and allowed Cin to pass before following her out. I come from a long line of peppers, and we are some of the most interesting people I know. Humble much? She gazed up at him, with humour lighting up her eyes. Hey, I'm not the one who said variety is the spice of life. The focus is on variety, not spice. And you, my friend, should lay off the clichés. If you're so interesting, you should try coming up with your own material. He was about to throw out a witty comeback, when his eyes landed on her mouth. White foam dotted her lips, drawing attention to the rounded curves of her Cupid's bow. He swallowed hard. Josh? He'd completely missed her question. Sorry, what? Is there cream on my face? Some, he managed to croak out. She traced her tongue over her upper lip. How's that? His own tongue felt paralysed. Maybe his coffee did have something besides caffeine in it. There, more? Where? But now they had stopped in the middle of a sidewalk. Josh faced her without thinking. He reached over and swept the pad of his thumb over her mouth. He cupped her cheek, enjoying the warmth of her soft, smooth skin. You're good now. She drew in a sharp breath and stilled at his touch. The pupils of her eyes dilated, darkening their colour a little as she gazed up at him. Thanks. Something in him didn't want the moment to end. His eyes lingered on her face, wondering if her lips tasted as sweet as the aroma of her pumpkin spice latte wafting in the air. How had he been so blind the past few months? He'd been so focused on Cin's technical skills that he hadn't paid attention to the other parts of her, the gorgeous feminine side that was making his pulse race. With her dark brown hair pulled back, he could see the slender curve of her neck, the way her jacket hugged her curves. No, stop. What was he doing? He was looking at her the same way the other guys did, giving her extra attention because she was a woman. The muscles in his shoulders tightened. There was no way he would be so shallow. He dropped his hand and stuffed it into his pocket. We should get back. Cin's brows drew together for a moment before she nodded. Sure. They walked the rest of the way to the office in silence. Hey Pepper, I'm on my way to the grind. You wanna come? Josh stopped typing, his fingers frozen over the keyboard, even as his heart rate picked up speed. Out of the corner of his eye he saw Cin, leaning against his cubicle wall, her hands stuffed into her vest pockets, waiting for an answer. I'm gonna pass. I have a ton of emails to catch up on. A pause followed before she spoke again. Do you want me to get you something? A pumpkin spice latte, maybe? The teasing lilt of her voice made him grin, but he wiped the smile off his face. I'm good, thanks. He called over his shoulder before returning his attention to his laptop screen. Is everything okay, Josh? Cin was closer now, and the sweet, somewhat spicy perfume he associated with her tickled his nose. He couldn't pinpoint the exact scent, but it reminded him of apple cider or pumpkin pie. Wait, he knew what it was. Cinnamon. What? Had he said the word out loud? Nothing. What were you saying? You look like you need caffeine. Those are some dark circles you've got around your bags. She pointed to the area under his eyes. Have you not been sleeping well? Not really. That was an understatement. A week had passed since he and Cin had had the breach, as he'd come to call it, and his mind was a constant war zone. Day after day he battled with himself as he tried to focus his thoughts and energy on resolving tickets, answering emails, and helping customers do anything that didn't involve paying attention to her. He'd been doing his best to avoid her, declining her invitations for coffee, and even taking a different route to his cubicle so he didn't have to pass hers. The tactic was a bit aggressive, but he wasn't going to put himself or Cin in a compromising situation again. The plan had been working well, until now, with her sitting on the edge of his desk, just inches away. He couldn't help but notice how gorgeous. He pushed back his chair and got up. I have to go. I forgot Mitch wanted me to stop by. She stood as well. Sure, we can talk later. He made it halfway down the hall when he felt a hand on his arm. He spun around and came face to face with those light green eyes he'd been seeing in his dreams. Yeah? Are we good, Josh? What do you mean? I feel like you've been avoiding me ever since... She paused and shook her head, as if changing her mind about what she wanted to say. I just want to make sure that you and I... that we're on the same page. The same page? We're friends, right? Friends. That's what he was trying to be, even though quite honestly he wished they could be more. Of course, friends. Good. Let's hang out soon, okay? I've missed you. She blushed. Talking to you, I mean. Yeah, sure. I've been busy. We'll catch up sometime. He gave her a tight smile and walked off before she could respond. Mitch, you wanted to see me? Mitch waved Josh into his office. Sit. How are you, Pepper? Fine. Busy as usual. Great. That's what I like to hear. And the team, they're staying on task? They are. Ever since you started the competition for the highest weekly numbers, the guys have been more productive. That was a good call. Just a little trick I picked up from one of those management seminars HR made us go to. It's all about providing the proper motivation. You'll learn these things soon enough. The way Mitch leaned back in his chair with an expectant smile made Josh feel like he had missed something. What? Okay, let me be clearer. I'm talking about you being promoted to manager. Congratulations, Pepper. You're going to have your own team. It took a second for Mitch's words to register, but when they did, he felt adrenaline pumping through his body, taking his mind off his earlier problems. Thanks, Mitch. I won't let you down. I'll have this place running like a tight ship. I'm sure you will, but let's start with a boat for now. HR wants me to send you some training before we expand your crew. Of course. Your new title will go into effect in a week, but in the meantime I need you to train your replacement. Sure thing. Who do you have in mind for the role? Well, you know I like to promote within the department whenever possible. I'll admit I was worried about finding someone as qualified as you for the job, but I talked to HR and we found the perfect person. She hasn't been here that long, but she's proven herself to be someone the team respects. As soon as Mitch had uttered the word she, Josh felt his neck warm under his collar. Did they suddenly crank up the heat in here? She, you mean Cin? Yes, I already gave her the good news, and she's looking forward to learning from you. Sounds like the two of you have become good friends. Yeah, great, he replied, trying to inject some enthusiasm in his tone. He couldn't shake the questions weighing on his mind. How was he supposed to keep his distance from her now? At least the training period would be short. But what if... She's not going to report to me, is she? Mitch narrowed his eyes. Is there a problem? Do you not think she's qualified for the job? Not at all. She's not? At the sight of his boss's reddening complexion, he spat out, You misunderstood me. What I mean to say is she's more than qualified. You're scaring me, Pepper. What are you concerned about? Is she not technical enough? Not enough leadership experience? He held up his hands to stop Mitch's stream of questions. The last thing he wanted to do was cost Cin her promotion. He had to fix this quick. No, really, Mitch, I have no concerns. She's a great IT person. She's one of the best we got. She knows her stuff. Heck, she might even troubleshoot better than me. Her people skills are great. She's funny, genuine, and so positive. Without realising it, his lips curved up at the thought of how adorable she looked when she flashed her dimple. It kind of grates on your nerves at first, how happy she is, even when she's in the middle of dealing with an issue. But when you start to appreciate her good attitude, and feel better for no other reason than the fact that seeing her smile makes you want to smile, she's the perfect person for the lead position. Pepper. It took Josh a second to realise Mitch had been trying to get his attention. What? If Cin's so great, why don't you want her to report to you? I just thought it'd be better if someone more experienced managed her, seeing as how she's more junior. Josh almost rolled his eyes when he heard his own response. He didn't need to see Mitch's sceptical expression to know he was running out of excuses. He pasted a smile on his face. I can do it. I'll manage Cin. Mitch nodded. Great, it's settled then. I'll finish up the paperwork with HR today. His eyes shifted from Josh's face to the open door behind him. Speaking of, he raised his voice and called out, Cin, come in. Hi, Mitch. I didn't mean to interrupt. I can come back later. Don't worry about it. I was just informing Josh of your new role. He gestured at them both. This is great timing. Why don't you guys start the knowledge transfer now? Josh took a deep breath and rubbed his clammy hands down the front of his jeans. There was no escaping now. He had a job to do. He stood and turned to meet Cin's gaze. Do you have time now, Cin? Sure. Her green eyes locked on his for a second before she strode out of the office. If his sisters had taught him one thing, it was that when a woman said things were fine, things were anything but. Josh had tried for 20 minutes to find out why Cin was giving him one-word replies and avoiding eye contact when he suggested they take a coffee break. She gave him a curt nod and stormed out of his cubicle, leaving him even more confused. When his shock passed, he scrambled to his feet to catch up to her. He barely slipped through the elevator doors when she pushed the button for the ground floor. Whoa, what is going on, Cin? Are you upset with me? 'Cause I have no idea what I did or didn't do. She crossed her arms and glared at him, her eyes taking on an unfamiliar shade of green. I heard the last part of your conversation with Mitch. The last part? Which part are you talking about? The part where you said I'm too junior for you to manage. I thought you respected my skills. What happened to me being more technical than the rest of the team? Was that all a lie?" Before he could reply, the entire elevator jerked and slowed to a standstill. His legs wavered for a second, but he regained his balance, right as Cin crashed into him. The sudden motion forced him to take a step back until the wall caught them both. "Are you okay?" Surprise, along with concern, softened her tone. "Yeah, are you?" Josh nodded. "I think we're having—" In the next instant, the lights went out, blanketing them in complete darkness. "A blackout," he finished with a droll laugh. "Way to state the obvious, Pepper." At least her sense of humour had returned. Maybe he'd have a chance to explain himself, if he could get the words out. The pitch blackness seemed to heighten Josh's other senses and made him even more aware of how Cin was flush against him, the warmth of her body driving him crazy. "Here, let me help you." She braced her hands against his chest and struggled to a standing position. The direction of her voice shifted as she moved to his side. "Thanks. What do we do now? Who knows how long we'll be stuck in here? I bet the phones are down too." For the first time, however, Josh wasn't worried about work. About the woman standing 2 inches from him? Definitely. Why was it he could stop a virus in its tracks, but he couldn't manage being close to a woman? Well, not any woman. This was Cin. The only woman he had ever felt this way about. He took a deep breath to focus his thoughts. "There's not much we can do but wait. If the elevator's affected, then the whole building's out. It usually takes half an hour to get the electricity back." "You're awfully calm." People can still use their cell phones if they need to, and most folks don't mind getting a break from work. Except for Danny, that is. Last time this happened, he said it was the longest hour of his life. Why? Because he was trapped in there with Mitch. No, poor guy. Cin's laughter echoed in the small area and reminded him of why he had fallen for her. Her light-heartedness was infectious. "Yeah, that's why he never takes the same elevator as Mitch now." "Okay, this isn't fair. If you're trying to make me forget I was mad at you, it's working." "Cin, about that, let me explain." The click of her boots sounded on the tile as she backed away. "No, it's fine. I'm used to not being good enough. All my life, I've been trying to live up to my brothers. Ever since I was little, I tried to run as fast as them, hit the ball as far, whatever they did. I wanted to do it too. I was never able to catch up until I got into computers, but I guess I'm still not cutting it. Even when I tried my best isn't good enough." "Hey, don't think like that." With both hands out in front of him, Josh took a few steps towards the sound of Cin's voice. "Sorry, there you are," he offered when he bumped into her shoulder. He took her gently by the elbow, then found her hand and held it between his. "Cinnamon Thomas, your best is good enough. In fact, it's great. You didn't hear the earlier part of my conversation with Mitch, when I was saying how qualified you are, how you both have the technical skills and people skills." "Wait, what did you call me?" She grabbed onto his hand, surprising him. Your name?" "How in the world did you find that out? Only my family calls me Cinnamon." "You said your mum's a chef and one of your brothers is named Dill. Let me guess, is the other one Basil?" "Close," she answered, sounding impressed. "His name's Sage. And your perfume smells like cinnamon. Not to mention you've been sneaking it into my coffee for the past month." "You knew?" "It has a pretty distinct flavour. I'd have to be missing a lot of taste buds not to notice." "Why didn't you say anything? You still drank it." "I got used to it. I realised I do like cinnamon." More than she understood. But how could he tell her? The elevator suddenly jerked into motion, but just as quickly it stopped. The movement propelled them toward each other, and Josh caught Cin in his arms again, This time he tightened his hold on her and pulled her close. He was sure she must have felt the pounding in his chest. It was time to come clean. The reason I didn't want to be your manager is because the way I feel about you has changed. What do you mean? I appreciate you as a friend, but you mean more than that to me now. I think you're an amazing woman. You're smart and funny, and have such a great attitude about life. Your smile has the power to light up my day, like the cyber power backup battery we used in the office. That is so geeky but sweet. He smiled, relieved to feel her body relax against his. You have no idea how much I enjoy spending time with you. It's just that after what you told me about some of the guys treating you differently because you're a woman, I thought it'd be better to be professional and keep my distance. Is that why you've been avoiding me? Because you like me? Yes. He gave her a gentle squeeze. That's why I didn't think it was a good idea for you to report to me. But I couldn't tell Mitch the real reason why. I hope you understand it had nothing to do with your qualifications for the job. It's all me, not you. You and your clichés, she laughed before releasing a long breath. You don't know how relieved I am to hear this. Does that mean you feel the same way? You could say I've gotten used to you too. When you wouldn't talk to me or even look at me this past week. It just wasn't the same at work. I missed you. Josh's heart skipped a beat to hear her admission. You missed grumpy old me. Well, you've got to admit, since we met, you've only been a little grumpy. He groaned. I should have known that was coming. Just like how I'm only a little shallow. You catch on quick, Pepper. He felt a peace overcome him as Cin rested her chin on his chest. But that feeling was overcome by regret as he realised the predicament they were in. Cin, you do realise that since you report to me now, we can't date each other? Oh no, you're right, she moaned into his shirt. There's got to be a way to make this work, he thought out loud as he contemplated their options. But if I turn down the manager role, you won't be able to take the lead role. What if maybe I transfer to another department? No, Josh, you've worked so hard for this. I won't let you give it up. Honestly, I'd rather give up the job instead of give up on us. I can always find another job, but you... There's only one you. That was the happy truth. There was only one Cin, and she was right where he wanted her to be, in his arms. She placed one hand on his chest and leaned close. Thanks for saying that. I don't want to give up on us either. What do we do? He rested his chin on her soft hair and mused. We could talk to Mitch and let him know what's going on. Yes, that's it. She shook free of his hold. I'll ask if I can continue reporting to him. That way there won't be a conflict of interest. Josh squinted as the bright screen of Cin's cell phone lit up the small space. It's worth a shot. Cin dialed Mitch's number, then placed the phone near to her ear. Hi Mitch, it's Cin. How's everything upstairs? Yep, Josh and I are in the elevator. Oh, just a few minutes more? No worries. Actually, the reason I'm calling is... Josh watched her as she talked, taking in the beautiful features of her face, and using his memory to fill in the curves and angles that were hidden in the darkness. Her animated expression changed from uncertain to pensive, then hopeful. He couldn't bear the wait much longer. He began pacing from one end of the elevator to the other, anxious to hear the verdict. The light faded as Cin hung up the call. It's a go! You should have heard him. He said something about how it all makes sense now, like he knew something was going on. Huh, so he's good with you still reporting to him? Yup, which means we can date. I mean, if that's what you want. Of course that's what I want. He pulled her into his arms again. I definitely need more spice in my life. Every day, and not only at work, but outside of work too. Just you and me. Cin placed one hand on his chest and tugged on his shirt to draw him closer. Does this mean you're asking me out? Yes, I want to open doors for you and pick up the tab when we go on dates. We can start by getting 2 pumpkin spice lattes right after we get out of here. What do you say? I thought you'd never ask. They were face to face when the lights came back on and the elevator resumed its descent. Knowing there wasn't much time, Josh leaned in to bridge the remaining inch of space between them. Sweet traces of cinnamon lingered in the air, drawing him to her as it filled his senses. His mouth met hers, ready to savour the fullness of her lips. As the kiss deepened, he could almost taste the pure joy that Cin brought to his life. He thought the moment couldn't have been better, until the doors opened and the sound of applause greeted them. Josh broke off the kiss and turned around to find employees from their company and a few from the neighbouring offices gathered on the ground floor. He reached for Cin's hand and led her out. As they passed through the small crowd, he spotted a young guy with his palms raised in disbelief. Hey, guess it was my turn to get stuck in the elevator this time. Why? Danny groaned. Why do I have all the luck? Sorry, Danny, Cin grinned, her adorable dimple on full display. Let's just say that spices are meant to stick together. Isn't that right, Pepper? Absolutely. Josh chuckled as he squeezed her hand. They walked out of the building into the brisk fall air, their feet taking them on a familiar path to their favourite cafe, the promise of hot drinks and so much more. The end. Thank you for listening to this audiobook. If you would like to read more books by Liwen please check out her website at liwenho.com.